Hi, Brian Gruen, pastor of First Congregational Church of Kittery at Kittery Point United Church of Christ, offering what I can, when I can, for reflections, for resources, for human beings in this really strange and hard and unpredictable time. So for the last year, our church has been exploring this idea that maybe trees, another one of God's beloved creations, if we observe what makes them really good, healthy trees, maybe it helps us to figure out what makes us good, healthy humans. That's the short version. We'll try to do these videos more frequently so that we don't have to do catch up every time. But today I want to talk to you about one of those spiritual practices. We've identified 5 spiritual practices that kind of match with the 5 things that a tree trunk has to do. The trunk of a tree has to do 5 things for the tree to be healthy and alive. This is a wonderful, beautiful tree stump, but when it was alive, it had to do 5 things. We already talked about that first ring, that red ring. For us, that's the practice of humility. Today, I want to talk about this second ring. Can you see it? Yeah. So for the tree, that ring of wood in the trunk is called sapwood. And that's the part of the tree that is specifically for carrying water throughout the entire tree, from the roots all the way up to the leaves in the upper branches of a tree. The sapwood carries water throughout the tree, keeps it watered, keeps it fresh, keeps it vibrant and exuberant. Human beings also require a particular practice, a particular part of ourselves to keep our souls watered and alive and vibrant and flexible. For us, that's trust. The last several confirmation classes that I've led over the last 10 years, I don't even use the word faith with them. Faith sounds, it goes really well with belief, it goes really well with ideology, it goes really well with the idea that, like, okay, I have faith in yada yada, so I get to make up my own mind about stuff. Faith really means to trust. When we say we have faith in God or we are people of faith, it means we are people of trust. Trust is an essential part of being a human being because humans are relational creatures. Humans aren't the strongest animal created. We're not we might be like logically the smartest, but we're not the fastest. We can solve problems ourselves, but only in limited ways. And so human beings are communal. We require societies, communities, other people, family units. We require others in order to live. Trust is essential, not only to our own emotional and spiritual well-being, but to our survival. And trust is something that I don't think we practice very well right now in this particular moment in human history. I'm holding a phone in my hand that gives me access to all the information in the world, and it allows me to like call anybody I want or be on social media in the ways that I want. That amount of control over my life and how I communicate with others, whether I send them an email or a text or a picture or an emoji, whether I reach out at times that I know they won't be available, when I choose to have my phone on or when I choose to respond, it's a lot of control. Control is the opposite of trust. The more we control our lives, the more we want to have control over how we are and how we behave and how we act and when, the less room there is for trust. I think that's the biggest obstacle for us. When we control too much, there's just literally not enough physical space for us to trust others. My ability to trust has been knocked for a loop these last couple months. I finally trust that it's okay to be outside in the open air without a mask if I'm by myself. But this whole new virus, it's really challenged all of us. What do we trust? What's safe? How do you live in the world as fearfully and as cautiously as we've suddenly been taught we have to be? One of the first Sundays in May, we tried to offer a worship service online on Zoom, and we'd been using this system to lead worship for the whole time of the pandemic, and suddenly Zoom just quit on us. It just didn't work. It was chaos. I had a deep, deep sense of betrayal and around technology. It really hit me hard. Like, I can't even trust that this platform is going to be there for us to connect our community in this strange time. The actions of the last week, as we see people peacefully protesting across the country, honoring the life of George Floyd and screaming out Black Lives Matter because we believe that they do. And seeing those peaceful protests being turned into something violent, and seeing the police, the very people who are supposed to protect and serve us, not only taking those precious Black lives from us, but then also agitating peaceful protests, turning them violent. It's leaving me with a lot of trust issues right now. Not to mention the fact that I don't get to see my community. I don't get to talk to my friends face to face. It's really difficult to carve out the time to make phone calls and find ways of reaching out to one another. And with that lack of communication, that lack of touching base, all of our negative emotions can pile up, and it makes trust even harder still. And trust is such a fragile thing in human life. I don't know about you, but if the slightest wrong is done to me, it makes it really hard for me to trust in that person going forward. If the slightest cosmic wrong is done to me, it makes it really hard for me to trust in God going forward. How are you supposed to trust when trust is broken? Well, there's two things. There's two ways that we practice this spiritual practice of trust. Two important things. One is, it's a mystery. We reference the sapwood in the tree. If you've had an opportunity to read the wonderful book, The Hidden Life of Trees, you turn to chapter 10 of that book, and it's called Mystery. And it's the part of the book where they talk about the sapwood. And the author, Peter Wohlleben, he talks about in his book how mathematically it should not be possible for a tree to use the sapwood to pass water from the roots all the way up to the branches and the upper leaves. Just mathematically speaking, it shouldn't be possible because the sapwood is so narrow. It's all these really narrow little cells. And sure enough, that's where the water is, and somehow the tree pushes that water all the way up from the ground, up to the tallest branches, up to the highest leaves. And he talks about being in class, learning this, and doing the math and saying, that's impossible. There's no way for the tree to generate enough pressure to actually shoot the water up. Are there other ways that this is happening? Is the tree actually like sucking it up like through a straw? And the short answer is we have no idea. We just know that it works. We know that the water goes through the sapwood, and somehow the tree is able to use the sapwood to take the water all the way from the deepest roots all the way up to the tallest tree branches and the farthest out leaves. Peter Wohlleben says, how does it happen? It's a mystery. All the math and all the science in the world isn't going to answer all the questions for us. I think the same is true for humans with trust. Your trust has been shaken. The person or the people or the community or the institution or the God that you were taught to trust in, that you held in such high esteem, that you trusted for so long, it's shattered your trust. How are you supposed to trust again? I offer to you that it's a mystery. You can't enter into mystery if you're focusing on control. When we get hurt, we want to control our bodies, we want to control our lives, we want to do everything in our power to never be hurt again. So we say, who can you really trust? We get cynical and we focus all of our energy on controlling ourselves, controlling our lives, so we're not hurt and disappointed. In order to practice this vital, essential practice of trust, we have to let go of control. We have to be willing to feel our feelings, to be vulnerable, to remember our humility, to remember the practice of identity. We know we're not everything. We know we mess up. So doesn't it make sense that others can mess up too? When we mess up, we want to be forgiven. The fastest way to being forgiven yourself is to forgive others. This mystery, the lack of control, mystery, that's part one. Part two of this practice is, I call it the practice of tears. It becomes a lot easier to trust others when you grieve what you've lost. When you're able to weep and mourn over the hurt that has been done to you. Again, not easy for us. We live in a society and in a world that does not teach us how to do this frequently or well. But it's so important. It's only by crying out, either literally or poetically, crying out, lamenting what has happened, letting the tears come, letting the water go all the way from our toes through our eyes, feeling that flow of water go throughout our bodies and shedding through sweat to connect with the water of the world, by being vulnerable, by being porous, by being exposed. It's only by grieving what we've lost that we can create the space that allows us to start trusting again, to start trusting that maybe my conception of God was too limited, but that doesn't mean God has abandoned me. Maybe the expectation I set for the people in my life, maybe they were unrealistic expectations that were bound to fall apart at some point, but that doesn't mean that people are bad. It doesn't mean that trust is gone. What has to happen? What do I need to do to be able to trust? What can others do to earn my trust? How's it all going to pan out? It's a mystery. How does a tree water itself? How does it use these tiny little tubes to shoot water all the way up to the highest branches? It's a mystery. We don't know all the answers. Since this pandemic started, I don't think I've cried every single day, but I know for a fact that I've cried most days. Especially recently, as folks in our community have started dying, not from the virus, but just dying, because it's what we do. I've been so angry and so sad that I couldn't be with those people in their last moments, that I couldn't say goodbye. We have loved ones going in the hospital. We have loved ones suffering quietly at home. And it gets so overwhelming for me that I cry. I spend a lot of time crying these days. And it's exhausting. But it's rejuvenating too. I find that the more in touch with my feelings I am, and the more I can vulnerably and honestly share those feelings with others, as sad and as harsh and as violent and as potentially evil as the world can seem, the more I express my sorrow and my sadness about it, the more I somehow mysteriously discover that there are people and things that I can still trust in. And that trust revitalizes me. It brings me back to myself. It wakes me up in the morning. It keeps me from drying up and getting brittle and fragile and broken. We need trust. We need to be able to trust each other, now more than ever. I look around our world, I don't see our problem as being politics. I don't see our problem as being even policies, as damaging as a lot of policies in our government are right now. The biggest problem I see in our world is the lack of relationship. We don't trust one another. We don't trust people who disagree with us. We don't trust people who look different than us. We don't trust people who aren't ourselves. Relationship seems to be getting harder and harder, and I think that's because we're not grieving what we've lost. We're not mourning what has passed, which makes it really hard to discover that mysterious new trust that will revitalize us and help us to build relationships going forward. So, the spiritual practice of tears, of mystery, trust. Wherever you are in this moment of this pandemic and quarantine and reopening and protesting and weeping, I pray that the mystery is able to find you. I pray that you are able to feel revitalized and refreshed. And if that's feeling difficult, if that's seeming impossible, I invite you to carve out a time, some quiet space, to be alone. Let the tears come. God is in them. God is with you. You can trust that.